The competitive cubing scene has been increasingly dominated by a narrative of China versus the world for the past 2 years, specifically in 3x3, and many cubers in the United States have in turn become worried about their dominance in the event coming to an end. And while the USA's future in this event is uncertain, with China now overtaking us as the most common nationality in their top 100 list, our dominance in cubing as a whole is still not challenged, as we have the most cubers in every other top 100 list. But there's one event which the US is by far the worst at, and that event is Megaminx. Megaminx seems to be the most international event at the top level, with 40 countries represented in the top 100, more than any other event. Even then, 23 Americans make the Mega Top 100, on the lower end but not too bad compared to other events. But looking at some other statistics really reveals a weakness in this event. When looking at the top 25 only, Megaminx is tied second for events with the least Americans, and tied with 3x3 for a worst event in terms of our national record holders world ranking, at 7th place. In addition, the North American record, which is the US national record, is the second slowest continental record. But most interesting in my opinion is the fact that the United States has held every single and average world record in every event except for Megaminx average, which means getting this record would be a huge achievement for the US, making it the only country to have held every world record. We have been close to this world record in the past, with Nicholas Nang having been a world record contender throughout the late 2010s and having got the world record single back in 2015. Nicholas was even one solve away from the average world record in 2022, still being third in the world. Alexei Senyavin, who took North American record from Nicholas the next year, also had his time as third in the world, but eventually Leandro Martin Lopez's rapid improvement of the world record from 29.27 in 2022 to 26.6 in 2025 took the world record out of reach for these Americans. Now LML's record has itself been beaten by Timofey Tarasenko with an average of 25.36 and Ziyu Wu with an average of 25.15, about 2.5 seconds faster than Alexei's current North American record. This brings us to our current situation, with no clear future for American Megaminx. Most of our top solvers have been at it for years and can't compete with upcoming talent from other parts of the world, especially Europe, where fast improving solvers such as Alex Samuel Martin, Hayden Granger, and of course Timofey Tarasenko have helped bring their continent from a situation much like North America's right now to being the dominant force in the top 25. With this, you can hopefully see why I think the future of American Megaminx is so interesting, and why American Megaminxers have a great opportunity right now. We have a national and continental record that's been standing for over a year with an unclear future on its own. And add to that the fact that whoever breaks it could open the floodgates to a new wave of American Megaminxers, directly or indirectly leading the United States to once again be in reach of a legendary moment in cubing history by breaking the world record average, and it seems like the perfect time to start speculating on what, or rather who, is the future of American Megaminx. So I tried to find this out by making 2 polls in the Megaminx Solvers Discord server, as well as asking some top solvers for their insights, and the answer seems to be a mystery indeed, with 20 out of 25 voters, including the current North American record holder Alexei and the world record holder at the time Timofey, saying the first American world record average will be from someone we've never heard of. And it doesn't look any closer when looking at the time frame either, as 20 people said it'll be sometime after 2029, and 10 people even said it will never happen. So let's go through all these options and find out why this is the case. The first option was that the world record holder will be someone from America's current top 3, consisting of Alexei Senyavin, Nicholas Nang, and Hee-Won Seo, who are also the only 3 North Americans with a sub-30 average. Under most conditions, you'd expect this to be the most obvious choice, but it only got one single vote, which shows the unusual nature of this situation. To explain why everyone is so sure of this, it helps to first look at some history, and see how these 3 got here. This takes us back about 10 years from now, when the US seemed to have a very bright future in Megaminx, and that future was one person, Nicholas Nang. What's more, this had been the case for about a year before he even competed, as he first came on the scene by posting his Megaminx times on the speed solving forum, starting in June 2014 when he got started with the event. In just over half a year, he got sub 1, which is basically world class at the time, and by the next summer people were asking him when he'd go to a competition, as he was averaging well below national record and getting unofficial world record times. Nicholas's rise was one of the most interesting stories in cubing in my opinion, since he came out of nowhere and rose to the top, practicing solely Megaminx, without anybody even having seen his solves until September 2015, when Brandon Lin posted a video of him. But in November, Nicholas finally got to compete, getting national record and beginning one of the longest runs of dominance in US cubing history. In 2016, Nicholas would get North American record, and he even got world record single, becoming the second American to do it. He only got a few rounds for the next few years and briefly lost not to Andy Denny in 2018, but he had improved it all the way to 32.47 by the pandemic. However, despite being one of the greatest Megaminxers of all time, Nicholas never ended up being first. He had been second to Yuda Hyun in 2016 and second to Leandro Martin Lopez in 2023, two vastly different eras showing his unparalleled longevity in the event, but sadly it was never enough for world record average. He never stopped improving his PR, getting sub 29 this year, but over the last year or two he slipped from the very top of the rankings, now sitting at 10th in the world, which is still almost unheard of for someone who's been fast since 10 years ago. But if we focus back on the US again, his dominance is even greater, as he held on to North American record until 2023, and everyone lost a competition until that happened. This brings us to Alexei Sinyavin, a Cuban from the same city as Nicholas, and the only American who could beat him to this day. Alexei also came out of nowhere in a sense, first competing in Megaminx in 2018 and getting sub 1 in his first round. By the end of the next year, he was almost sub 35 and had risen through the ranks to second in North America. So when competitions reopened in 2022, he was in position to go for now. By the end of the year, he had 31.84, which would have beaten Nicholas earlier in the year, but he had gotten sub 30 by then, so Alexei would have to try again in 2023. And after inching closer and closer, he did it in June 2023 at a small weeknights competition with Megaminx as the main event, getting single in round 1 and average in finals, marking an end to 8 almost uninterrupted years of Nicholas's dominance, and the first time he ever lost a competition. Alexei broke net average for the second time about a year later, with 27.92, and that's where it stands today. Finally, we come to Hee-Won Seo, who hasn't competed very much, which means I don't have as much information about him. He first competed in 2017, but he didn't get an average, so his real debut was in 2018, when he competed twice and got sub 1. In 2019, he got a 40.4 in an average, but wouldn't improve this until after the pandemic, when he was solidly sub 40 and got his current placement as third in North America. At North American Championships in 2022, he broke sub 35 and made the North American podium, and by the end of the year, he was consistently in the low 30s. The next summer, he got bronze medal at national championships and also became the Southeastern champion. He's not competed a lot since then, but he broke sub 30 at World Championships and made the podium in an upset, beating out Alexei and Nicholas and becoming the first American to make World's podium for Megaminx in 20 years. So in the end, what do these three Cuba stories tell us about why they're not expected to get world record and about US Megaminx's situation in general? To look at why these solvers aren't considered world record contenders, it's worth introducing two stats that we'll be looking at throughout this analysis, especially in the second part. First, we have the moving average, which essentially measures how well someone has been doing recently based on their official averages. Since the WCA ranks people based on their personal records, someone who fluked a good average or who used to be good would be ranked high, which isn't useful for us when looking at future improvement, and can generally be inaccurate when trying to see what someone usually gets. But to look directly at improvement, I calculated a second statistic, which is the mean of all 2025 averages as of early October, divided by the mean of all 2024 averages. So the lower the number, the more improvement. Alexei, Nicholas and Hee-Won's improvement scores are 0.99, 0.98 and 0.95 respectively, which means Alexei and Nicholas have improved very marginally, while Hee-Won's improvement is noticeable but really on the low end. Compare this to the top 3 European Megaminxers and the difference is quite clear, with Timofey, Aiden and Alex having 0.92, 0.95 and 0.68 respectively. Then there's the moving average, and none of these three are actually sub 30 for moving average, while Timofey and LML are solidly sub 30 and closer to 25, which shows the gap between them and the top Americans as well. This explains why people are so sure of this, but why is this the case at all? An obvious reason is definitely just bad timing, since there have been so many rising stars from other parts of the world over the last few years, and they've just gotten ahead of us. But I think looking at the top US solvers solving styles themselves gives us an interesting explanation, even if it's not as important. Nicholas and Alexei have opposite solving styles in a way, since Nicholas uses Eastern and has smooth and efficient solving, still being the gold standard for Eastern solutions, while Alexei uses Western and is more TPS reliant. I can't find too much of Hee-Won's solving, but his style seems to be in a similar category to Alexei's as well. This duality is pretty interesting, since the conventional wisdom at the moment is basically to use Westland for right-handers, which means to rotate counterclockwise and not clockwise during S2L, and put solutions over TPS. This doesn't apply to a lot of solvers at the top, but it's still interesting to consider that none of the top US solvers fit into this exact mold, and that could be the reason they're not fast enough to be world record contenders right now. This is where the top 3 stands now, with the world record out of reach, but the North American ranking still consolidated by them. Setting the scene for the next part of this video, where we'll be analyzing the remaining options and actually looking at the future, seeing if we can identify any rising stars, and speculating on how this situation will play out, all with input from some top solvers. So if that sounds interesting, stay tuned for the next part. It's taken the hard work of so many people for us to get this far, and I think the story will only get more exciting.